Ja Morant is a player that I have been pretty damn critical of over the last year or so, not for lack of talent, because as a number 2 pick and just being as good as he was immediately as good as he was last year, phenomenal. Really, what bothered me was that I thought the discourse around Ja Morant was a little bit unfair and giving him a little bit too much credit for what he was at that point, and for what his potential would be. However, 8 games into this season, and Ja looks like a top 15 player. While I'm sure some of his numbers will go down a bit, there is no denying that he has taken a significant leap as a player. That is due to his own improvements across the board, really, as well as the change within Memphis's roster that unlocked his ability, which is another thing that I was wrong about, and that change was the Jonas Valanciunas trade that I was very critical of, but looks like it was the right move for this team. So let's talk about Ja Morant, the Grizzlies, and why I was wrong. Before I get to know on this video, about half of the people that watch these videos are not subscribed, so if you fall into that 50%, then please subscribe. Also drop a like on this video, only takes 1 second and makes a massive difference. I'm trying to hit 200k subscribers on this channel by the end of the year, so if you could do me a favor and subscribe, seriously, would be much appreciated. Maybe you want to wait till the end of the video to see if you like what I do, but you know, if you do, subscribe. Anyways, on with the topic. First, let's dive into the changes with Ja Morant's game that have really unlocked him, as well as just looking at how good he's been. He is currently averaging 27 points a game, his typical 7 to 8 assists, and the most notable thing is he is shooting 37% from 3 on 5 attempts per game. That 3 ball, as well as his mid-range game and floater game, is what's really unlocked everything for him, because while those have been weaknesses and them no longer being weaknesses is good, it's also completely opened his ability to do what he is elite at more, and that is driving to the rim. While he is not outstanding in the areas he has improved in, he is now a threat. He is shooting 47% from 10 to 16 feet, which is where he's taking some pull-up shots out of the pick and roll, 50% from floater range when he was previously in the high 30s, and of course that 3 ball I mentioned earlier. Not only is he shooting his 3s on league average percentage on a pretty decent volume, not crazy high for a point guard, but not bad, he's doing so in a way that indicates that this is something that's going to continue. It is the confidence in the way he is taking these 3s, and the fact that a lot of them are pull-ups, a lot of them are deep 3s. Right now, 40% of his 3s are off of the dribble, so that is a big sign for him as a shooter. When you're watching the Grizzlies, honestly, Ja looks like a 40% three-point shooter. His attempts and his volume and his confidence has been drastically different from the first 2 years of his career. This has resulted in the rest of his game, specifically his driving game, being a whole lot easier than it ever was, and allowing him to be on the attack more often than he ever was. It's really a rather simple equation. The more a defender backs up on you, the harder it is for you to drive. If he has to respect your jumper, then he's going to step up, and that's going to make it easier for you to drive. It's a tale as old as time. It's a pretty common thing, even though I think it's said a little bit to the discredit of his ability, that Steph Curry, the rest of his offensive game is so good because his 3 ball is such a weapon. Like, he's able to drive so effectively because they're right on top of him constantly. Now, I think he would still be good at driving and finishing if he was an average shooter, but it's definitely fair to say that those things make him unbelievable at really every other aspect of the game. Having a higher percentage floater is also helpful as it allows for more versatile finishing around the rim. He no longer always has to go straight up on his defender. Sometimes he can just float a shot around them, especially if a big man is dropping on him in the pick and roll. Now, he's not like an elite floater shooter right now, but he's definitely good at them, and it's a good shot every time. And that is definitely making his scoring overall a lot deadlier. Now, as mentioned earlier, it's possible that some of these numbers take a little bit of a dip and he's not quite as amazing as he has been in these first 8 games. However, I would argue that I don't think that's going to be the case just based on the eye test. As mentioned earlier, when you watch the Grizzlies, you can tell this is something that he has worked on. In the preseason, Ja was taking a ton of mid-range pull-ups, specifically out of the pick and roll, and in this regular season, the way he has stepped into his 3s, especially from deep, has had a whole lot more confidence than ever before. I know it's just 8 games, but I feel like the jumper is legit, not legit good, but legit not bad for sure. This level of improvement, taking glaring weaknesses and then making them solid enough, again, he's not elite in these categories, but he's no longer bad in them, is incredibly impressive to do over one offseason. The way Ja has played thus far is what I expected his peak to be, and he's doing it in his third year. This is kind of a similar trajectory to the doubts that I had for Jaylen Brown a few years ago. When Jaylen Brown had his 4th season and he averaged 20 points per game, I honestly thought that's what his peak would be, and it'd be what he'd do in like his 7th season. But then after he reached that point, I just assumed that he had peaked early. But then in his 5th and 6th years, he was playing better than I thought he ever would. I underestimated the rate of development that both of these guys would have and underestimated their ceilings. Now, to give myself a little bit of a pass, that level of improvement in that short amount of a time is kind of nuts. It's not something that happens very frequently. Usually you gradually take steps. Some steps are bigger than others, but for both of those examples, big fucking step really fast. And I don't want to repeat the same cycle that I did with Jaylen Brown with Ja Morant, because as mentioned, what Brown did in his 4th year when he averaged 20, I thought that was him just peaking early, and then he's been better since then by quite a bit. Now with Ja, I don't want to say that he's peaked early and this is just what he's going to be for the rest of his career. Now I say, hey, Ja is reaching what I thought his peak would be in his 3rd year, so I don't know what the fuck he's going to be by his actual peak. Right now, in terms of what I think Ja Morant's peak could be, the sky is the goddamn limit, let's put it that way. I originally said that Ja would be like the 12th to 10th best player in the league at his peak. What I'm seeing with him right now is like top 15, the way he has been playing. I'm not saying he'll necessarily maintain it perfectly, but if he continues to be, Ja has played like a top 15 player this year. So for him to get that far this quick, I don't know what he can do. That rate of improvement is insane. It's possible that he's peaked crazy early. Sometimes a guy comes in the league and he's as good as he's ever going to be, but he still plays like 12 years or so. Like, for example, Magic Johnson, he made some noteworthy improvements in his game as his career went along, especially in regards to his jump shot, but he wasn't a drastically better player from the last season of his career, or the last one pre the virus. But the last season, Magic Johnson, 1991 and then 1980, there wasn't a drastic difference in talent between those two players. He just came in the league unbelievable immediately. It's possible to just have your greatness immediately and then it just kind of continues on. But I don't think that's going to happen with Ja. I think what he has done thus far in this season is just showing that the sky really is the limit for him, and I didn't see that before. Now, another big factor in how Ja has broken out and how the Grizzlies offense overall has broken out has been the trading of Jonas Valanciunas. I was originally very critical of this move because I felt like Jonas was consistently at the very least the 2nd best player on the Grizzlies last year, if not often the best player, depending on a game-to-game basis, of course. However, as good as Jonas is, and I think very often Jonas is underrated, he's pretty much the definition of a floor raiser, but not a ceiling raiser. He's like a textbook definition of it. Jonas would allow the Grizzlies to be like an 8th seed caliber team over the last 2 years, but in terms of them breaking out and reaching their potential, he was never going to be a big part of that, and I think a lot of aspects of his game held that breakout back from happening. Moving Valanciunas would remove this safety net, which was risky in terms of how good this team would be in the short term. They could very easily tank the season, as Val no longer being there would cause them to just not be as good. But it would allow them to reach their ceiling in the long term. However, with Ja breaking out this year, that long-term effect seems to be happening now. The Grizzlies offense now is way quicker, way more free-flowing, way more three-point shooting, which is fantastic. There's a lot less post touches, like even with Steven Adams. Steven is worse than Valanciunas. However, he's not going to shoot the ball as much as Valanciunas. He's not going to ask for post-ups. He's not going to drag the offense to a grinding halt for his old man basketball. Rather, he's going to get dump-off passes and pick and rolls, and he also runs the floor far more than Valanciunas would. So it's a more modern game that comes with moving Valanciunas, and that's more adaptable to the other players on this team. While Valanciunas kept the team afloat, he also kept them from reaching the potential as a roster overall. Right now they have DeAnthony Melton, my guy Desmond Bane, and Jaren Jackson Jr. all starting and shooting very well from 3 on high volume, and Steven Adams is just better in this type of system than what Valanciunas was. Now, on the concerning end of things, through 8 games, this is the worst defensive team in basketball, which when I saw that when I pulled up their basketball reference page, I was kind of surprised by that they would be 30th in defense. I knew it wasn't as good as it was last year, but damn. After taking a big offensive leap from 15th to 7th, they went from 6th in defense to 30th. However, to give them credit, they have faced some very good offensive teams thus far this season, which has not really been fair to them in terms of their defensive rating. They've played the Miami Heat, the Denver Nuggets, the Clippers, the Lakers, so, you know, to give them a little bit of a break, it wasn't strictly their fault defensively, and it's different now with Valanciunas, and there's a little bit more of a different defensive scheme, so I think their defense will work its way up to like middle of the pack, while the offensive leap that this team had will maintain itself. So what the Grizzlies are doing is great, Ja Morant's breakout is great, and I was completely wrong to cap his ceiling as like a top 15-ish player, because right now he's playing like a top 15-ish player, and he's doing it in his 3rd year, so anything is possible. I'm sure Rudy enjoyed all of this video because he's a Grizzlies fan and Ja Morant super stan. So yeah, but that is it. Shout out to Rudy for editing this video. That is the end of this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more NBA content like this, and cue the outro music.